Welcome, everybody, to Service and Sport. Thank you for joining us. Today, our discussion is titled Life at the Speed of Sport. We're going to be chatting about time and priorities. And I don't know about you, but this has really been a challenge all of my life. I'd get sick every spring because my body would finally give in to the tempo I'd been pushing it at. Even when only working part-time. As one of our guests, Mark, has said to me, I like to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag regularly. I don't know if any of you can relate to that. Yeah. So whatever the root cause is for us, sometimes we pack more into our schedule than there's time for. Sometimes I pack more into our schedule than maybe there's energy for. That's why we're talking about time and priorities, living in the tension between the two of those. We talk in sports chaplaincy and character coaching about the ministry of presence. But doesn't that mean I have to be there? Like be there all the time? Be there, be around enough to be relevant? How do I manage that? That time with also my other responsibilities? Because I also have to, as we've been talking the last couple months, take care of me, take care of all the people that depend on me, which might not just be in my role as a sports chaplain. So let me introduce to you our guests for today. We have 4 of them. 2 have worked for FCA in the past, 2 currently are. They all love it though. Mark Parker, Patricia Hollowell, Daniel Rich, and Shadlir Shepard, who goes by Shep. Patricia and Shep hail from Maryland. They've worked together at the University of Maryland there. Daniel, I'd consider a true entrepreneur, apostle spirit. He's a transplant from the South out to Hawaii by way of California. He keeps starting new things on new frontiers out that way. And Mark, all the younger folks who have worked around him view him as another father. We jokingly say, oh, you got a problem? He's got a guy. He knows somebody. He seems to know everybody. His most recent FCA post was the director of the Atlanta collegiate team. He's now returned to the business sector. But this diverse panel bring different experiences to our discussion today. Not only do they have different types of giftings, different types of posts that they've held within sports ministry, within FCA, but they all have navigated different seasons and stations of life. And that matters to our discussion today because we're talking about how we manage our time and our priorities. Daniel can definitely speak to sports chaplaincy as a single person. I know he did that for a while. Now all 4 are married and have navigated the addition of children to the family as well. Both Shep and Daniel have added to their family within the past year. Shep's youngest is now 9 months. Daniel's is 6 weeks. So he's still running low on sleep, I'm sure. Patricia has several children, but they're on the older end of the spectrum. One's about to go off to college. We won't talk about that too much yet, right? But she's navigating the older ones. And then Mark, his 2 are grown, and he's running some laps as a grandfather as well. So just to share with you a little bit of the family dynamic that they bring to this, because that's definitely a part of how we manage our work with time and priorities. All of these individuals are, like I'm sure all of us on the call, they are driven people who have a calling on their lives and a desire to be faithful with all that God has entrusted to them. They've tried, they've failed at times. I'm sure we will hear from both their victories and their failures today. But in that, they have learned some lessons and emerged with wisdom for us regarding time and priorities. I know that I personally take notes on each of them every time I'm in a conversation with any of them. So Roger, let's dive in with that introduction. And will you take off with our first question?
Gladly. Right off the top here, let's address this first one to our friend Mark Parker out in Georgia today. Mark, why have you found it to be personally important to manage time and priorities? You're experienced, you've done a lot of things now, but why is this particularly important to you?
Well, I think the first thing is that it is the one resource we've got that is absolutely finite. We can go raise more money. We can go make more money. We can, we have a lot of other resources, but time is something that we don't control, and it's going to run out for all of us. So we have to be good stewards of the time we've got. And I think that's, in terms of how I deal with it, trying to steward it, I think is the best way to put it. Because I think if we get too rigid into our scheduling, then we start to compartmentalize, and we start being ruled by our schedule instead of controlling our schedule. So I would say that the finite nature of it is the biggest thing that drives me to control it. And here again, I'm on the older side of this call. That becomes a lot more of a reality as you realize you're on the back end of your race.
Playing the back nine of the golf course, huh? I
Yep.
hear you. Do some of y'all have some things you'd like to drop in there as well as to why this is particularly important to you, others of our guests? Shep, Daniel, Patricia.
Yeah, I think just on top of what Mark said, I think the importance as I have gotten older is to be where my feet are, to be present. And so to have enough of a plan that I don't need to be worried or thinking about what's happening next. And I can truly be present, whether that be with my coaches and athletes, be that with my family, be that with kids that I'm coaching, being able to know that I'm organized enough that I can be present in the moment.
Very good. Daniel or Shep, you have thoughts?
Yeah, big thing for me, 3 kids, got a 4-year-old here with me, 2 and 6 weeks, is that I have more to do than ever and less time to do than ever. Now, there's truth and logic in that, but it's really a lie from the enemy. And it's most important that I don't think of my time as scarcity, that I have a time of abundance even in this time. And I'm recognizing I want to be exactly where my Father is working. I don't want to be doing anything else. I've pushed enough buses up hills and took enough time and built teams to do it. I want to do exactly what my Father is doing, because otherwise I am wiped out, worn out, and got a sore back. And I'm young, so you guys probably are laughing at me for even saying that.
You know what? That segues straight into our second question that I want to direct right at you, Shep. There's a difference between managing your time and managing your energy. For me, that's more an issue at 65 than it was 35. But if there's a difference between managing time and energy, how does that play out for you at your station in life?
Well, like you said, right now I'm 26. So energy is at abundance. But I also know that if I don't sleep well, or if I don't take care of my body, my time is wasted. My time is lethargic. My time is, I'm watching the clock. I am not as productive. So if I get good sleep, get a workout in, and get my day started, I'm present for my girls in the morning. I'm on time to work. I am more energetic throughout the day. So energy, I think you can, if you just run on energy without time management, then your time is going to be wasted eventually down the line, because energy does run out, even if you are 26. So the energy, I think, comes first. So take care of that, which would be good sleep, healthy eating, a nice workout routine, nice regimen, because we're keeping up with athletes and we got to look like they look. I think I'm a big fan of that. Okay, these guys are lifting weights. If I want to mentor them, I got to, make sure that I'm in shape as well. So doing that. And then from there is where I put that schedule in, that time management, and say, okay, now I'm going to put these pins here, these things here, and I have energy for it all because I've taken care of that step first. So that's kind of the short and skinny of it. Is for me, I always try to make sure that I'm good, right? If I got all the energy I need and I'm sleeping well, then even if that means taking something out of my schedule to get rest and to sleep, or to just take spend an hour block of uninterrupted, nothing planned, no time, just rest and see whether that be at home, whether that be on lunch, whether that be wherever, where I'm just taking a step back to either replenish or regain that energy, because we don't want to just run off caffeine, coffee, energy drinks, things like that, because I've tried that, it doesn't work. So it makes you feel worse somewhere down the line. So yeah, I prioritize energy, but then my energy, kind of having good energy, just drives me to be on time, have my time management, and everything else flows from there.
Good. What does that look like to you, Mark, or Patricia, or Daniel?
I would say for me, it's a matter of organizing my schedule and knowing what brings me energy and what drains energy. And I think both are okay. For me, I am replenished by having some time to myself, which, you know, when you have 3 kids in the house and you're doing full-time ministry is kind of a rare thing. But figuring out how to manage my time. So if I have a day where I'm on campus and I have to be on all day long, the next day I might schedule the whole morning just to do some work in the office and kind of replenish and be by myself. You know, just kind of knowing myself and knowing what brings me life and kind of what replenishes my bucket, so to speak, helps in organizing my calendar as well.
Very good. That's helpful. Yep. Go ahead, Mark. It looks like you're ready to go.
Yeah, I think this brings up part of the prioritizing as well. We're all called to do some hard things, but sometimes I think we need to look at things that drain energy and really evaluate whether that's something you're called to be doing. And here again, we're all going to be called to do hard things, but sometimes we try to take on things that we're not necessarily called to, and those tend to really drain our energy as well. And so I would say that goes back into the prioritization of it. But as Shep said, you know, having that, and I know we're going to get there, you know, kind of the rhythms of rest and, you know, keeping yourself in good health, those are invaluable.
Yeah, that's smart. Sometimes it's handing that responsibility to someone else. It's less that is really gifted at it or called to it, as you said, or finding other people on your team who can pick up these tasks that are really draining to you, that could be, we're all better because you gave that away. That's a good point. Daniel, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to highlight, Patricia, what you said earlier. If everyone catches this, she said being present, and the opposite of being present is trying to multitask. And when you multitask, every other task you're doing is like a hole in your bucket. And somehow, you guys know it, you try doing your email while watching a Zoom call. How do you feel at the end of that Zoom call? You've just lost it. You've lost so much. So Jesus, my mom always frustrated me. She's like, why are you running? Jesus never ran anywhere. I'm like, Mom, stop it, you know, but learning how to walk as the Lord walked and be in the midst of the interruptions and disruptions that happen. And okay, this is where the Lord has me right now. So.
Good. One question came in by the chat, and it's this. Some things that we may do take lots of energy and not a whole lot of time. Others may take very little energy, but lots of time. How do you sort out which ones to address, what part of the day? How do you arrange your time and priority related to that difference?
For me, I would say the things that take a lot of energy, I will get up before everybody else at home. So if that's, I have to, you know, do some, I don't know what that may be, whatever the activity is, I try to do that while everybody's sleeping, and just knock that out as early as possible. And then the other things that may not take, you know, as much energy and maybe a little bit more time, where I can kind of slow down or take a break and come back, I'll do those things later in the day, especially like, you know, with the rhythm of kids, right? A 9-month-old, you're on her time. I'm not on my time. I'm on Holland's time. So if Holland decides it's time to play or she's crying, I can't, you know, but if it's something that just drains my energy, I don't have the energy for her at that moment. But if I have something that's just be less strenuous and it takes more time, then I can kind of take a break, tend to her, come back to it. But I try to put all those like high priority tasks early in the morning. Like I have to get this done, as I have to be focused, and it's going to, take a little bit of effort and energy on my part. I'll try to do it as early as possible, so I kind of have that time to focus and lock in without anybody else taking, trying to get me and stuff, pull me out or do whatever it may need to do as a dad and a husband.
Really good. Others of you have thoughts about that? There's the disconnect
Yeah.
between energy and time, no energy. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I will absolutely second what Shep just said. Trying to get the hard things done early, or else they hang over you and they start affecting everything else you do. If you know you've got to do something that's really tough in the afternoon, it's in the back of your mind, and consciously or unconsciously, it's affecting everything else you do that day.
That's great. To prioritize maybe your best hours of the day for those most difficult tasks is probably wise. Good. Patricia, any thought there?
Yeah, I would just add to that actually something Mark said earlier in the, sometimes you need to invite people in to those things. And so if something is going to take up a lot of your energy, then maybe it would be good to be energized by inviting someone into that project with you to help along with that. And same with time, right? Just because it doesn't take a lot of energy, but if it's going to take a lot of time, sometimes it's nice to have someone along the way for that as well.
Very good. Let's run on to this next question. And Daniel, I'd like to address it to you first. How do you understand the concept of rhythms for life and the command to Sabbath? How does that intersect where you live?
Yeah, 2012, I went hiking, got stuck on a cliff in Utah, no water, 124 hours, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't that long, but after being rescued off of that, my body was so depleted that I got mono as a 25-year-old, and it knocked me out for 3 or 4 months. So by 10 a.m. I needed a nap. So that was the day that I stopped acting like Shepherd and running around. I got about 3,000 gray hairs in a moment, and I've had to learn to function a little bit slower. And God's healed a bunch of that in his last 2 years, actually. So something I hung on for 8 years. And what I found through this whole process was that I'm a human being, not a human doing. That my identity isn't about how much I accomplish, but just by who he says I am. So practically 40 hours is enough inside of FCA. And doing something for family on that second day, like working hard around the home or doing ministry within my church, is an important thing to take my other time. And then resting one full day is absolutely significant. It's a day of remembrance. It's a day of remembering who our Father is, and remembering and letting him tell me who I am again, because I don't know how good you guys are at this, but I'm great at forgetting what he's already said to me. So that's been huge. Hey, don't nod at that. So my 4-year-old knows. Thank you, Esther. I think that there's a rhythm inside of each day, and I'm going to use this little image right here. I think some of you guys I know have seen this semicircle, but from rest, we entered into work. From rest, Adam and Eve were given that first day. They were built on the 6th, on the 6th, on the 7th, we rested. Their first day was rest. So out of rest, we work instead of trying to get all of our work done and then come back to rest. Because many of us try to work our way back to rest, and instead we just fall all the way to the ground and just flat. And, we blame it on Satan or, something else. But it's being outside of the rhythms the Lord's created. And you can see that across the year. You guys can see that across the month. So what's been so helpful for me is that Sabbath day, obviously starting my morning. I don't start work until 8 right now in this season of life. And I don't have meetings until 10 a.m. Every day. I'm coming out of a place of connecting with the Father and working my first 2 hours with him. So yeah, I think that is good. And then every 4 months, I pull back for 4 days. So 3 times a year, I'm pulling back for 4 days, and that's been really good. super helpful. And I have to vacation for my vacations because those aren't rest.
I hear you. I hear you. Those 4-day kind of mini sabbaticals are healthy and good and probably rejuvenating. Yeah.
It's the most amazing gift. I used to go to a monastery with a group called the Unhurried Life. Author Alan Fadling wrote a book, Unhurried Leader and Unhurried Life. And he led these 4-day deals at a monastery in Southern California. And that was a rhythm that I didn't leave after going through that process with him for 2 years. So it's my balance, counterbalance to how
Yeah. Good. Let me ask our other guests, how have you approached this sense of rhythm, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, annually, and then the whole concept of Sabbath?
Well, rhythm is important. I mean, as an athlete, say quarterbacks, right? You hear them always talk about, oh, the quarterback's a rhythm, or a shooter in basketball, rhythm, 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 rhythm. That's something that I thrive in. Is I know what I'm doing Monday through, whatever day. It's the same thing, constantly going and going and going and getting to that groove. But I've learned over the last couple of years is not to be so rigid in that rhythm, allowing God to interrupt my rhythm, right? And Jesus did that. I go where the Father goes. I say what the Father says. So, and disciples are saying, Jesus, why are we going this way, right? Wow. He's like, well, we're gonna go through Samaria because I know it's a woman that needs my help. And they're like, it's way more efficient to go that way. That would have been me, like what the GPS says, go this way, Jesus. Why are we going the wrong way? Because he is allowing God, his Father, to interrupt his rhythm, the natural rhythm of things. So it's okay to have rhythm. And just like today, as you probably hear the things going off, I was supposed to be in one place, but I'm not. I'm in a police van making deliveries for Toys for Tots all across the county. Didn't expect that today. I got in, they said, this is what you're doing. So I'm in a van, but it's interrupting my rhythm. But I'm able to, you got to be able to be. I would have panicked, and you can ask Patricia that. A couple of years ago, I'd be like, oh, I don't know what to do. But now it's just, okay, well, I'm not gonna drive. I'm gonna sit in the passenger seat, and I'm gonna, Bluetooth and all that stuff and things like that. But that's one thing I've learned. Have a schedule, but allow it to be interrupted at any moment. Because say I could have donor call set up, but then the kid comes to me and says, Chef, I want to talk, or, can we talk? And I can't say, no, I got calls and he's like, well, I have class in 30 minutes, right? So what do? You tend to that person and you call the donors later on the way home from work where you were just going to listen to music anyway, right? Stuff like that, being able to find those small spaces to interchange and do things like that. And then the Sabbath is important. I made a mistake, of always thinking that it has to be Sunday. But it can be, it can be any day. It can be a day where you just, you sit and you're completely, totally present. For me, it looks like no phone, right? No, iPad, no anything. It's full attention to everybody in my home. It is a day of, just family and pouring into my family. That's the best thing for me. And I usually get a day like that. It's usually Saturday, where we just are, there's no plans, there's no anything. It's just dad home with the girls and I'm at their mercy, right? So, and I enjoy it. I enjoy that.
Good. It's a challenge for highly achieving people to be able to build enough margin into their schedules for those divine interruptions. They happen. And if we're just attentive, we can adjust on the fly and be 100% present in the right place. Patricia, in your station in life, how does this work for you? Sense of rhythm and a sense of having Sabbath.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rhythm, as far as when you first posed the question, I was just kind of thinking the rhythm of our family, because that has changed over the years. I now have 3 teenagers in the house. In fact, as Marla was introducing me, the 18-year-old came over with the muffins I'd made, and he's standing behind the computer going, "Are these for me?" Yes, boy. But it changed over the years, right? I mean, when they were little, we used to do family fun nights on Fridays, and they would take turns picking their activities. And now they're older. One of them drives. He kind of sets his own schedule, and so finding time with them to have both of us off of our phones. And sometimes it's not everybody together. Sometimes it's just me and my husband with one of them, or me with one of them, and then every once in a while we have, total family time. But embracing the rhythm and the stage of life that we're in. I think is important too, as we look at the rhythm of our whole life. Our first ministry is our home. And so figuring out what that looks like and how to be healthy there. And I think that changes as you go over time. And then, finding time for Sabbath. I like what Daniel said about taking 4 days out every 4 months. I did that for the first time last year, and it was so rejuvenating. It was exactly what I needed. And I definitely think that's something that I'm going to be building in as well, just to have a couple of days where I can get away and be alone with God and, really say, okay, where are we at, and how can I be refreshed to be able to dive back into ministry?
Really good. Marla, I know you were single for a long part of your life, and you had to figure out some rhythms that are maybe peculiar to being single. Can you speak to that station in life for a minute?
Yeah, I'd love to. Sometimes if you're single, there's your own perspective and then your colleague's perspective on your station of life. And so first, to speak to your colleague's perspective, is that, well, you're single, you don't have anybody to go home to that needs you. Yeah, I mean, literally, sometimes that's how it can come across from your colleagues. So why don't you do this thing that's going to run until 11 or midnight? Or why don't you handle this crazy drive or this crazy task, because you happen to be younger or because you happen to be single? And there's some truth in that. There's definitely some validity in that. Also, I've seen and heard from some of my colleagues, there's some abuse in that as well. So if you work with somebody who's younger and single, there's an opportunity there for them that is incredible, but also an opportunity to help them know how to establish healthy rhythms and such as a single person that they will take into marriage. Because if we don't help them learn that as a single person, then they're just going to take those bad habits into their marriage, should the Lord have that for them. Or they might not ever have the opportunity to meet anybody because their work has become center in their life. And to the single people, just to remind them too, you do have a family. You don't just have your biological family. Maybe you're close with them, maybe you're not. But I jokingly called it the family, the friends that are family, particularly now in many cultures and places, people that are listening, you may not live near your biological family, or you may not have a nearness to them emotionally. Your friends, the roommates, who are the people that you go home to emotionally? Those are the family, and those are the family, if you will, and those are the relationships that are important to tend to. So like all of our panelists, our guests right now are speaking to their biological families that they have, like some of these rhythms and thoughts you can establish for yourself as a single person. One final thought on that, just as I was transitioning from single to married, I remember I'd be sitting on the back of a car with a 22-year-old college athlete who's bemoaning their singleness. I'm 35 at the time, and it's 11 p.m. at night. And it took a lot in me to not want to slap him and be like, look, but I did say to them, look, if I was married, particularly if I had children, I would not be sitting on the back of this car with you right now. I'd be home having to tend to that. There's a certain beauty that for the sake of God's kingdom, I am free to go and do and to go and have fun. I didn't have to consult with somebody else if I could spend this time or this money on a vacation. I just make the decision for myself. It was wonderful. So there's this incredible amount of freedom in that station of life. And then so that my prayer became, God, if the prayer is thy kingdom come, thy will be done. I've seen more kingdom come to my life and the lives of those around me because of my singleness. As I transitioned into marriage, can I see more kingdom come to my life and the lives of those around me because of my marriage? That was going to be my standard of decision on this with the guy I ended up marrying. But whatever season of life you're in, can you live with time and priorities such that more kingdom comes to the lives of your life and the lives of those around you? Make decisions in that fashion.
That's really good. Mark, you've come from the business world, entered the FCA ministry world for a while. Now you've gone back into the business world. Tell us, how have you handled this sense of rhythm and built-in margin for Sabbath and such?
Yeah, and I think that, as Marlo was saying, we go through seasons of our life where God gives us more freedom and more capacity to do more. Obviously I can do more as an empty nester than I could when I had kids at home, and I was going to their ball games and doing the parental stuff with them. I've got more capacity now than I did then. A lot less energy, but more capacity. But I think that those rhythms really do kind of keep you. They almost kind of act as somewhat of a natural boundary to make sure you get re-energized.
Yep, really good. Hey, I want to bridge to another question here. Patricia, I'd like to ask you most directly about this. Each of y'all are in different seasons of life than the others. And what seasons of life so far have brought unique challenges? What kinds of unique challenges have come to you, and how have you managed them along the process? What have been those challenging points?
I mean, every single one. Every single one, I think, comes with its own unique set of challenges, and with its own set of unique joys as well. Good. Right? So when the kids were really little, this was before I was working for FCA. When we first moved to Maryland, I had a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old, and I ended up staying home with them for about 2 years. And honestly, that made me insane. I needed to talk to adults at some point in the day. I just could not. And that was really, really challenging for me. And then every single other stage, as they moved into elementary school, middle school, now I have 2 in high school and 1 in middle school here at home. And, so as they're younger, I think it's physically exhausting. When they're babies, getting up in the middle of the night, and you have to feed them, you have to do all the things for them. And as they get a little bit older, you're trying to manage the tension of teaching them right from wrong, teaching them about the Bible, teaching them to love Jesus, and as well as needing to physically do things for them still. And now we've moved into this space where I have one that's driving. We have one that's out of the house, but we have one that's driving here at home. And then we have one who's going to get her learner's permit in a couple of months. And then we have one in 3rd grade. And so they're having to go out and make these decisions for themselves, and you want them to make the right decision, but at the same time, you need to let them kind of go and do. And so I think it's emotionally exhausting more than physically exhausting now. And so really remembering just to continue to bring that to the feet of the Lord, and say, okay, you love them more than I do, which I don't know how that's possible, but, go with them wherever they're, as they go, because I don't go with them to a lot of their things anymore. I show up at their ball games and things, but, they go to friends' houses and they go to homecoming and, they make their decisions. And so just really trusting that, God's going to give us wisdom to continue to parent them, but also, they're in God's hands and kind of saying, okay, here we go. Because as you manage this stuff, I work with college athletes. So I'm hearing about the struggles that they're going through. And I don't think they're far removed from the struggles that my own children go through. And so being able to kind of manage that tension and say, okay, I'm kind of counseling these kids through this, let me, as I come home, not to bring it home with me, but also to use the wisdom and kind of apply as I'm working through things with my own kids that they may not talk to me about, but I know they're dealing with these things and I hear it from the college athletes.
That's really good. Station to station, the game changes a bit, but we can adapt. Yeah. Shep, how does that look to you?
So
challenges.
I am 26. So like I said, I've had maybe one really crucial difference in seasons where Heaven was pregnant with Holland, which was over a year ago now, but haven't had really bad pregnancy as far as morning sickness and things like that. So I did everything, right? I went to the grocery store, I dropped off to school, cook dinner. So my days look like 3 a.m. Like I have to. So it was like that season was like I have to shift my schedule, and I have to kind of go to bed at 8, 9 if I can. Who needed me or whatever the case may be. That was really that first season where things actually were changing, and you just have to again learn how to adapt. And people say, "Well, why don't you rest? Why don't you?" I was resting, but you can't sacrifice time with God. So that's got to come first. So if I got to get up 30 minutes early or an hour early, got to do that. So my days were looking very weird. And I had so many people like ask me if I was okay during that season because they would see me posting things at 3 a.m. like, Chef, are you sleeping? I'm sleeping. I'm just up early, right? And I would go to bed as early as I could.
Hey, I want to turn the corner here to get to our last question. And again, if you have a question you'd like to insert, you can put it in the chat. Let's get really practical. I'll start with Mark on this one, but then I'd love to hear from all four of you. How do you go about scheduling your day, your week or your month or your year? How do you break down those seasons across an annual calendar and think about them in a real practical way? How do you go about that scheduling process?
We've all seen the demonstration of the big jar and the big rocks and then the little rocks and then the sand. And I think ultimately you kind of start with the things that are immovable, the things that you truly don't control or have any influence over. Try to make sure that you are able to work around those. And then as you start filling in, I am probably more spontaneous than some of the folks on this call. As Marla can attest to. But ultimately, it really boils down, and this is kind of what Shep was just saying. Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things will be given unto you. And while we can try really hard to schedule and plan and all that kind of stuff, it's really about trying to stay in his will. And I've shared with people in ministry, both on church staffs, because they want to get rigid about, well, I got to carve this time out for my family and that. If you're in his will, do you really think he's going to let you neglect his family? I mean, I just, that seems illogical to me. And part of that is realizing that while my family is always my top priority, is always the most important thing, there are times when they're not my top priority because other things will happen. This week I've had to deal with death too much this week. I'm actually sitting in a church parking lot right now waiting to go to a funeral of the son of a friend of mine. I got called yesterday that a friend of mine's spouse died, and I, those are things that they interrupt that schedule no matter how much we plan. And in that case yesterday, that came in front of my plans with my family because I knew that I needed to be someplace. I needed to be with my friend. So, I think it really boils back down to trust and faith that God will order your schedule and that we're just kind of the mechanics that take care of the details.
Yeah, very good. Patricia, you're at the station in life when it's not just your schedule you're trying to manage, but it's also the people you oversee in your ministry, but also your kids' schedules. You have to line all those things up. How do you go about your scheduling process?
Yeah, I was laughing. I'm sitting here surrounded by notebooks, but I have planners. I have individual notebooks for individual things, and that's how I keep track of things in a very practical sense. I subscribe to all their Team Snap calendars for scheduling and things like that, and I spend the weekend kind of planning out meals, I do a 30-minute lift now in the off season with my two youngest kids. We've got weights in our basement. So I plan the lifts for the week. I spend time planning things out so that when I get there, I am prepared. Because if I get home at the end of the day and I've not planned dinner, we're having Chick-fil-A or we're eating a frozen. I'm not just whipping something together. I do not have the mental capacity for that. So I write a lot of things down, and I spend a lot of time organizing and making sure that we can be efficient. I honestly feel better knowing that so-and-so has a carpool and we can get it all done. And then, hey, when we all get home in the evening, we can sit around and talk about our day, and it flows a lot better. So I do spend a lot of time organizing calendars in a very practical sense.
Very good. Daniel, out there among everybody who just hangs loose, tell me, how do you manage and schedule things?
Yeah, everything's called a board meeting here, just out in the ocean. Yeah. For us, oh man, I've got schedules for 7-year blocks. My wife and I sat down right after we got married and said, hey, we're gonna have a Sabbath year every 7th year. What that looks like, I don't, sit around for a year. And what does it look like to not plant or, sow and reap? So figuring that out each time. I'm coming up on one of those in 4 weeks. Ooh,
look out.
7-year block finishing. And yeah, it's just been beautiful to imagine what those seasons would be like. And I think my overall picture, and I think these bigger rhythms, and it's important for us to know, are we in a fall season, a winter season, a spring season, or a summer season? And it's really about growth, because something's happening to the forest in all of those seasons. But it's all growing in some place. So hi, Keisha. The other piece inside of this for me is scheduling my day. I've said it earlier, but I work on FCA until about 10 o'clock, and then I work in FCA from that point on. So those are big things. I'm trying to get better or building and creating programs, solving problems, things like that. And then I'm gonna work in FCA after that.
Gotcha. And I imagine, just as you live where you do, just to connect with people on the mainland probably gives you some challenges scheduling wise, does it not?
Yeah, it's a bummer when your parents call you and you want to call them back, and it's like, okay, cool, got out of that meeting. It's 2 o'clock. It's like, oh, it's 8 o'clock in South Carolina. This is awesome. Those are all things like we all have those type stuff. But I'm grateful for the challenges and figuring out what is the answer to the equation for your new unique area.
Yeah.
And I think that's just back to the seasons thing, is if I know what season I'm in, I can more easily make those decisions. And I to the chance what Shepherd was saying, like I've got mapping Monday, tackle Tuesday, worship Wednesday, travel Thursday, finalize Friday. Like I've got those themes that help me go, okay, I'll do that on Friday. And I put that into a to-do list over there. Helps me. I mean, I feel a lot like Mark. I'm very spontaneous, but I've had to find these buckets so that way I can carry more.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Yeah, at least you've segmented time into particular ways of going about work, and that helps you be not only efficient but effective.
And let me say this real quick. We're on a school schedule, guys. There's 3 seasons. There's not 4 quarters. We don't function like a business. And there's a high point in January, February, and then it slows down because our huddles are set and people are kind of set, and then it slows for a bit. This is a great time to have a training and develop leaders and find your next leader. And then it slows down even further. This is a good time to go on vacation. I send all my staff out on sabbaticals, vacations in April and May. And then in the summer, it peaks again. Okay. And then in August, it's just like, what do we do? So it's a good time to have some family time. And then September is another big one. And then October, November, do trainings. And December, like, why try getting anything accomplished during that time? Agreeing with those 3 seasons. I think that's why, I'm always pushing back at FCA. Like, why are we doing a training in September?
Yeah.
I'm busy right now. Like, put that in October, please. So
that's really good. Yeah. Understanding the rhythms of the environment where you are and be able to fit into those helps you work in light of those things as opposed to them. Lastly, Shep, your thoughts related to how do you go about scheduling your life?
At one point, I was a lot busier than I am now. So with FCA, you have to be able to schedule things and be self-disciplined enough to be on top of yourself and lead yourself and discipline yourself. So during that time, I had my time blocks. I had these things and these things by this time and that time, whether it be hour intervals or whatever the case may be, especially working with, you know, in a football building, you got to work around those guys' meeting times, their class schedules, stuff like that. So I had to first sit back and learn their rhythms and then plan my day and my hours based on their rhythms. So
Exactly.
it had to be that way. But now, as a police officer, people are telling me where to be. So it's a little bit different right now. I know I'll be here from 8 to 4. So it's less me. It's just my job is to be there on time. And then after that, when I go home, it's more just kind of planning events as opposed to times, right? Okay, on Saturday, we need to go to the grocery store. This day, we need to do this, that day. But then again, my wife is taking a lot of those things. So right now, all I have to do is show up at the right time. And that's really it for me at this point in my life. But so I like to have a structure, a rhythm, like you said, but it all depends on the season. But with FCA, I had to do specific times, specific things and stuff like that. Time blocking is your best friend, I think. Taking whether I know some, you know, really, really busy people can do 15-minute intervals. That's, you know, if you got that kind of schedule, I'm sorry for you. But usually our intervals is, and then when you plan out your day by hours, you look and say, wow, I actually do have time. Because when you don't have a schedule, you say, I don't have time. But when you do have a schedule, you're able to say, well, I have an hour here and 2 hours here and another hour here. I can, you know, that's when I rest. That's when I get that energy. That's when I work out. That's when I go and watch a movie with my kids or do whatever the case may be. And then you can say by this time at 6 p.m., I'm done with all business stuff. It's family time and there's just uninterrupted family time. So that's why I love time blocking. Eventually I'll go back to that, but then I'll have my calendar and my work schedule a whole year in advance once I get out of the academy. So I'll be able to see these 3 days I have off. This is what I'm going to do on this day and this day. So that's one thing. If you aren't that, a lot of people aren't that person naturally, but I think again, I spoke on this on the training. I think Jesus has some kind of time blocking system as well, because you know he was up early and he said, I have to be here, and I'm going here, and now Peter, we're going here. So he kind of he knew where he was going, but he again allowed for his father to say, stop here for this person, stop here for that person, you know. So just going back to scripture and looking at how Jesus did it, he's the best at everything, right? He's the best leader, mentor, father, time blocker, you know, healer, coach. He's the best at everything. So if you want to figure out how to do something, see how Jesus did it. And I think following his rhythm is the best rhythm to have.
Really good. Our schedules, we can either control them or they will control us. Any summary thoughts, Marla, that you'd like to toss in?
I know they nailed it. We invited these four to come and be a part with it because of, like I said at the beginning in the intro, every time I'm in a conversation with any of them, I'm taking notes. I need to apply something to my life. I've actually got a note sheet right here. I took again things they said before. I need to remember. Sometimes I think I've forgotten more than I've learned, and just need to be reminded of that. So thank you to the four of y'all. Daniel doubled down in the chat saying work blocks are great. They are that. What Shep just spoke to has been one of the biggest learning points for me. We think about it. Mark began. I'll circle it around. Mark began talking about time, how it's the one unrenewable resource, the one thing we don't get more of. We budget for our money. As Shep was saying, I track all my pennies where it goes, so that I can build a budget for how I'd like to spend my money. Can I adopt a similar thought process towards my time and my priorities? How am I spending my time? Not just in terms of like actions, but also where am I spending it? With what kind of priorities am I spending it? It's like, can I have some sober self-assessment there first? And then I can go and go, okay, how do I want to budget this time? How is it that God's asking me to budget this time? In this season of my life, what priorities does he have for me? And then like I do with my money, am I staying in my budget? Let me evaluate on a regular rhythm. And that's something that our family does on a monthly and annual basis, or seasonal basis. Back to Daniel's point, life tends to be a little more seasonal than quarterly, so to speak. And so in this season, what is it that is priority, and how do we make everything in our lives run in that direction?
Very good. Going to wrap things up here as we're coming near to the end of our hour. I want to say thank you again to our guests. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time, the unrenewable resource you've invested in us. We're very thankful for that. This has been recorded. We're going to share this via YouTube. It'll also be put into our podcast, the Service and Sport podcast. You can watch for that. Next month on 2 December, we're going to talk about building our capacity. What are the things we can read? What are the podcasts to which we can listen? All the resources we may try to gather information by. What are those things that help us build our capacity as we serve people in sport? There's a wide variety of things through a whole bunch of channels that we have at our hands now. We're going to talk about those things. What are a bunch of those that have been most effective to us? And we'll have people who do podcasts. We'll have people who are authors. We'll have folks of various media on to talk with us about that. It's coming up on 2 December. Think about building your capacity. To wrap things up, may I ask Patricia, would you pray to knock down the door here?
Absolutely. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for the opportunity that we've had over the last hour to discuss time management, but also to just discuss ministry and to be reminded that you are the author of time. And we want to steward what we've been given well, but we also want to turn it over to you. And I pray that we would remember to hold all of those things loosely, to remember that you are ultimately in control, and that we would make plans, but that we would turn those plans over to you and hold them with an open hand. I thank you for everyone who's been here. I thank you for Roger and Marla for leading so well. And I pray that you'd be with us as we go from here. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, everyone.